Brad Lander is a city controller who made a daring decision to give up the post to run for mayor. So my first question is, why?
Every day I'm out talking to New Yorkers, and they're really hungry for a safer city, a more affordable city, a more livable city, and one that's better run. They want more from City Hall, and I believe they deserve it.
So Mayor Adams lately has been comparing himself to David Dinkins, calling himself David Dinkins too, and trying to mobilize members of the minority community to vote for him, trying to imply that David Dinkins didn't get a fair shake because he was denied his second term. Does that make it more challenging for you to run, to face the optics of that, running against somebody who's trying to say that there's some racial component here?
I mean, I'm talking to New Yorkers all across the 5 boroughs in very diverse neighborhoods, and they really want the same things. They can't afford the rent. They want more affordable housing. They see the mental health crisis playing out on the streets of our city, and they want us to do something about, severely mentally ill homeless folks. They want better approach to the asylum seekers. So to me, that's what I hear New Yorkers of every stripe wanting. It's not about history, it's about what we want for the future of our city.
So if you were mayor, how would you deal with the migrant crisis?
Yeah. What I think we should have done from the beginning, and we need to do now, is think about how we set people up to get jobs, get working, and move into stable housing on their own. Folks in the past have used more of a refugee resettlement model, help these folks apply for asylum, and 6 months later, they're eligible for work authorization. I was just at the new Jewish home on the Upper West Side, great nursing home and rehab center.
Right.
They're desperate for certified nursing assistants. And in 12 weeks, they can get people the certification that they need to do it.
But how do they get the work authorization? That's the key, I think.
Yes, but so what people don't know is if you file your asylum application, you're eligible for work authorization 6 months later. But right now, the city is kicking people out of shelter after 30 or 60 days, so their applications are getting lost in the mail, and we're not focused on the outcome. We're paying all this money. Are those providers getting people their work authorizations and helping them get jobs? Let's pay them for that instead of hundreds of millions of dollars on moldy rooms, empty hotel rooms like we found that Dago was providing. If we say instead, okay, what the contract is for is to help people get work authorization and jobs, that's what we'll pay you for, then that is what we could be getting.
So I want to switch gears for a second. I want to talk to you about a big problem in New York City with the MTA, with bus fare evasion.
Yeah.
And one of the assemblymen, Zohar Mamdani, says we should have free buses. I wonder how you feel about that. And given the fact that there are so many transit deserts, is free bus service something that New York City and the MTA should look at?
Well, I love the idea of getting to free buses. Kansas City has done it. They're a lot smaller than we are. We'd need some more resources to do that because it certainly has a cost. But I'd love to be able to explore. We haven't gotten the data yet on how the pilot went with free bus service. So I would love to pilot it. At the same time, if you're not providing free bus service for everyone, you do got to make sure people are paying. You can't have the situation like we have now where half the people are paying and half are not, because the half who are think, what's going on? I don't want to be a chump. But you can't really ask the bus driver, who's the only person on that bus, to also become an enforcement agent.
I guess the question is this. It seems that the estimates are that it would cost about $800 million to do free bus service. So somebody would have to give that money to the MTA. Most likely the city and the state would have to find some way to do it together. Is that something that the city and state should make a priority, or are there other priorities that you need to spend the money on?
And we've got a lot of priorities in mass transit, and the governor's canceling of congestion pricing took away $15 billion, which I know a lot of the viewers don't want to pay, but they just cut 23 elevators from inaccessible subway stations. We were out a couple weeks ago doing an audit looking at express buses with people in wheelchairs, and it's so slow to get on and off those buses. We got to get those elevators. We have to get the 2nd Avenue subway extended. We need better outer borough transit. So yes, free buses would be great. I hope maybe the new federal government under the Harris-Walz administration could start providing more money for mass transit. That would be a great way to get get to free buses for New York.
So I'm sort of interested in how you would re-energize the restaurant and hospitality sector of our economy. You know, we used to be the city that never sleeps. Now we're the city that goes to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Is there a way to do that so we can go back to that? And would that bring more tourist dollars and more sales tax revenues into the city?
Absolutely. It's funny. I was just last night at an old restaurant that had been closed in my neighborhood for a year, Giovanni's Brooklyn Eats. Just great. Started 20 years ago, closed because of a fire. And he was telling me the saga of just getting his permits to reopen, this guy that's been in business 20 years. So, you know, we do need to speed up and make it easier for folks to open restaurants in New York City.
But how do you make a mistake later? I mean, you know, if it's like 9 o'clock at night and you want to go out and eat, there are not that many options anymore.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things we could do to enliven the streets of the city. Some of it does get back to safety. People got to be confident they're going to be safe if they stay out at night, but maybe there'd be a way of really focusing on some of the areas in both Manhattan and the outer boroughs. My son now lives in Bushwick, and Bushwick is hopping at night, so there definitely are some places where that's working. Maybe we could build on what's working there.
So if you were elected mayor, how would you deal with the economy differently? How would you deal with it?
Yeah. I went to visit recently Dan Doctoroff, who had been Mike Bloomberg's deputy mayor, and really had this vision of a kind of virtuous cycle in the city that makes the economy thrive. We were talking about a few things. One is the public realm and making it safe. So I've made this pledge to end street homelessness of severely mentally ill people in New York City. And that's like one of the first things I'll be focused on as mayor. We could do it. And then, of course, businesses have an easier time opening and attracting workers. I really want to focus on higher ed in New York City. CUNY is a real gem, but we've got a lot of other institutions that could be investing in the next technologies, in AI, in tech, in life sciences.
Which create jobs.
And attract talent. And that is really what the key to New York City's thriving economic future is. The reason we're the best place in the country, in the world, is we're the place people are hungry to be, both who grew up here, but also who come here, and then create the new restaurants, the music and the nightlife, the culture, and the businesses that really hire and make it a thriving city.
Are you worried about middle-class New Yorkers leaving New York, and how would you try to retain them?
I mean, affordability is the biggest issue there. People want to be here. They love to be in New York, but if you can't afford the rent, you can't afford childcare, it's impossible to stay. So affordability has to be goal number one. That does mean building a lot more housing. It also means opening up homeownership opportunities that we really have not been focused on. I've proposed a few new homeownership programs for city workers and others. We've got half the homeownership rate of the rest of the country. We got to find a way to do better.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We're back with New York City Comptroller Brad Lander. You were at the Democratic National Convention. I wonder what that experience was like for you.
Oh, it was exhilarating. It really, James Carville had said before President Biden passed the torch that it was going to be like a 4-day Shiva. And instead, it was like a 4-day coming back to life party. People were having such a good time, and some amazing speakers. That Michelle Obama, she knocked it out of the park. I really felt like a dad watching, you know, Tim Walz and his kids, and Doug Emhoff with his and Kamala's. It was really great.
What were the takeaways?
I mean, the takeaways were Democrats want to fight for families, like those families care for their kids. It was the first time I've ever heard affordable housing talked about, President Obama and Vice President Harris. So we got to get busy. You can't take anything for granted. I'm going to be out knocking doors and making phone calls, make sure this ticket wins.
So what are the qualities that you think make a good leader?
I mean, they got to believe in the place they're a part of. You know, what I love about this city, I started working in community development with these women whose buildings had been abandoned. And they were the leaders that their blocks needed. They just needed some help from city government. And it's that kind of faith in the people of the city and its future, and a willingness really to give them the help they need to make it happen.
Believing in the work you're doing.
Yeah, and the people you're doing it with and for.
So, switching gears, what's your favorite time of day?
My favorite time of day. I am a morning person. I love those early, quiet hours.
Me too. I like it too. So, do you cook?
I do cook. I'm not a great cook. I'm like a follow instructions and recipe cook, but I could do that well.
Do you have a specialty?
Oh, I mean, I'm best on the grill. That's kind of the dad lander part of me. Grilled some steaks the other night for a friend's birthday, and that's what I'm best at.
Good. Do you know CPR?
I know it. I have never, thankfully, had to do it.
So how would your coworkers describe you?
Oh, I think probably earnest.
Earnest?
Yeah, I really believe in the work I'm doing. I
tell that.
believe in the other people who are doing it with me. I'm a good team builder and team player.
So as summer unofficially comes to an end, how will you be spending the long weekend?
We're seeing some friends. We are gonna be in Pine Plains, New York, upstate for the weekend.
Where is Pine Plains, New York?
Yeah, it's in the Hudson Valley, and I haven't spent time there before. We just rented a place for the weekend to see some friends who are dropping off a kid at college and spend the last gasps of summer, hiking and swimming and
Sounds
cooking.
like fun. I wish you a good time.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for joining me, and I want to thank you at home for joining us as well.